her amazing work around the world, but I will, just give you all a quick intro to her very vast biodata. So, Miss Vanini Belarmino is a curator, producer, and writer who works at the intersection of contemporary art and performance. She focuses on interdisciplinary collaborations and site responsive interventions. She is the founder of Belarmino and Partners and has led multiple projects across Asia, Europe, and Middle East. Her landmark project, which you will see shortly on the video, in situ performance as exhibition in 2024, activated landscapes and urban sites in Singapore and the Philippines. Now, as Assistant Director of Programs at the National Gallery Singapore, she commissioned over 60 site-specific participatory and immersive works and over 800 public programs. Um, and she curated 3 editions of the Gallery Children's Biennial and the Children's Festival called Small Big Dreamers, which focused on the reinterpretation of the life and works of Singaporean artist Lee Wen and led the special commission with artists David Madella, Ho Junian, Lee Ming Wei, Mark Giustiani, Mary Sanpitak, and Giselle Tolas. I hope I said all those names correctly. And she also co-curated Afterlude responses to Namjoon Paik with SF MoMA, and she's also a fellow of the Asian Cultural Council and the International Society of Performing Arts, and her essays have been published by Routledge, Roulette Rules, and Independent Curators International. For you, that was a long profile of her spectacular career. And of course, I'd like to also introduce Lee Kai, a very prominent name whom I think most of us here already know. So Lee Kai, of course, is a prominent lawyer and passionate advocate for the arts in Penang. So as managing partner of Ong and Manik Shah, he brings decades of expertise to his roles in the cultural sector. He currently also serves as chairman of the Penang State Art Gallery, and of course also is advisor to the Penang, where thoughtful leadership has been instrumental in revitalizing the Penang show and championing initiatives such as Spotlight, which is a national competition that supports and showcases young Malaysian artists. Um, this is another thing which I think is actually quite well known already. So Lee Kai is known for having one of Penang's most extensive private collection, featuring works by both renowned and emerging Malaysian talents. And among his significant contributions in his role in securing the acquisition of 12,000 sketches by the late Master Tan Chun Gi, works now part of the Penang Art Gallery's permanent collection and featured in the publication A Lifetime of Drawing. So, respected for his principled leadership and deep knowledge of both law and the arts, Mr. Lee Kai plays a key role in strengthening the governance and sustainability of creative institutions across Malaysia. Okay, so that's enough of me talking. We are here for much more interesting stuff, which is the presentation by Ms. Vanini Belarmino, and we'll start off first with a short video.
Hello, good evening. Thank you very much for choosing to spend the evening with us here at Penang Institute. I'm greatly honored to be here tonight. This is my first talk in Penang. I moved here 3 years ago with my partner. I'm independent. Anyway, so out of curiosity, I wonder how many amongst um, and so I just wondered, like, apart from working in the arts, how many of you have ever sort of gone out of your way to do something that you believe, you know, this way of most people? Yes. So my talk, charting alternative paths. How far would you go for art? It's not just about art. It's a combination of my life journey and my career in the last 35 years. It's a journey perhaps that I have consciously and unconsciously taken. It was something that I just had this simple wish. So, I come from a small town south of Manila, Pablo City. But I had just this burning desire that I just wanted to keep myself and my friends employed. That was it. That's how it all started. I didn't plan to be a curator or anything. I just wanted to make sure that the people around me, that the people I cared about, could continue dreaming and keep on with what they wanted to do. So for me, every time an artist say quits the job or like a creative person just decides I don't want to do this anymore, I feel like that I have failed. And so this sort of desire has kept me going throughout the years. So that's the charting alternative paths is coupled with this question: how far would you go for art? So this is um, it's a question that I had in my mind, like how can a provincial woman like me end up living in places like Bangkok, Coventry, Amsterdam, London, or Berlin, Singapore, and then eventually now. It used to be linear, but it didn't fit anymore. So the solid lines are cities that I have lived in. So I sort of created a cone. So that's me in the middle, and then from my hometown for Manila. Of course, like most teenagers, I wanted to move so far away from home, to the detriment of my grandparents who were so scared. I decided to study theater arts in the Philippines. And what lies ahead, what would be the future of this child, and eventually moved to all these places. So the gold lines represent like the institutions or places that I have worked in, and the dotted lines are the cities where I have set up projects. Actually, only for this talk that I realized that it all started, all these international projects, so to speak, or it doesn't really matter whether it's international or local, but I have been setting up projects outside my hometown since I was in the Philippines. So the talk, because it's quite long, we try to keep it succinct, but it's 35 years. So please bear with me. I hope I can keep you entertained. So I've kind of clustered the talk into four threads of thought, which is like imagination, courage, resonance, and agency. So I've sort of coupled with phases in my life and my own history as a curator. So I began working in the arts at the age of 16. So I was quite lucky, I think, really lucky. I had a head start. Professor Antonio Mabesa, the founder of the UP Theater and now Philippine National Artist for Theater, spotted me and decided that he would take me under his wing. So instead of pursuing an acting career, I became a stage and production manager. And this opened up a lot of doors because, like, if you're a stage manager and production manager, you have to know everything from A to Z how to run a show. This means like from washing cups to like taking down notes, like acting on stage. You have to know the lights, costumes, etc. You have to befriend all these actors, all the artists. You kind of have to run the whole show. And within 2 years, like from 16 years old, like I kind of had the fast track of this because I was working under the mentorship of Professor Mabesa. But then what happened afterwards was that by the time I was 18, um, another figure in the arts decided to take me and hire me when I was a student. It was the former president of the Cultural Center of the Philippines, Nestor O. Jardin. And so I was his sort of like just like a runner, like not necessarily just a runner, but production coordinator, international coordinator, whatever. I kind of just switch roles as the situation arise. So I'm a problem solver. So if you need to affect change in 1 minute, I should be able to command all the guys backstage to do this. But fast forward to 10, so just as an example, while working with this person, Mr. Hardin, I ended up working for Ballet Philippines in the history of Ballet Philippines, which is the national dance company. I was the only person that held three roles. I had multiple roles, and this was really on paper. I was assistant production manager during the day and PR assistant, and then I was also a stage manager at night. So I basically lived in that building for a good 7 years of my life, from morning to evening. So just learning the tricks of the trade. So fast forward to 10 years, 10 years just happened like, like that. I ended up working not only between arts and culture, but I ended up working in education, in advertising, television, and film. And then at the same time, also moving towards visual arts. All that while studying or trying to study art history to pursue another degree after while I was trying to get my diploma. That's another story. But anyway, the phone started ringing. And this is the time when when you have a house phone. I don't know if you still have house phones now, but my house phone just kept ringing everyone all the time. There was something. In the beginning, it was just my friends calling, like, "Hey, can you help us? We have a show, and no one's coming." Like, it's a 200-seater theater. And then at some nights, I would go to this alternative art space, and then artists, very famous artists, would they have paintings on the wall, and they would ask, "Can you help us sell it?" Until like some more famous people started calling me and said, "Can you help us with our organization, and maybe we could do something?" But I was young, I think, because I started young, and people thought that I was old at 27 or 20, 25 or 27. I got a little bit, I think, scared or disturbed. I couldn't figure out like why everybody needed help, including the famous ones. So I figured that if they needed help, who doesn't? And I can't really solve this. And I didn't have any money. I just had like all these big dreams, but I had a lot of friends, so that was more important. And I thought that because of this phone ringing, I began imagining things, and I thought that maybe um, there's answer somewhere else. There is a formula. There has to be a formula for the arts to solve all these like needs. And so, imagination has been both a dominant force both in my life and in my practice as a curator and as a producer. And I've always trusted my imagination. I mean, maybe way too often, that's how I kind of got to wherever, to all the places that I have been, because I am always imagining things and what if. And so I naively thought that by studying overseas, maybe they have the answer. So I had asked my friends, who were all young at that time, mostly, there were only a few older people. So I asked everyone to contribute $10 to $100 to send me away. So I said, because we will solve this, I can solve this, I can figure this out. And I wanted to go to the UK to study. And so, friends being friends, they were supportive. Um, and I gave them, if anyone gave me money, then I gave them a hand painted shirt, which I did myself. This is before all these campaigns online that and a GoFundMe. I do this manually. So successfully, I raised about 200,000 pesos. It's just about 800 pounds. And one of my friends, I only have like one friend who's an artist, he's a Filipino artist for visual arts, Ben Cabrera, one of your collections, if you have a lot of money. He gave me a print when I bought air ticket to go to the UK with this dream, and I was really clear. I'm going to make things happen. If I go to the UK, they have the solution. I don't know where I got this because there was no Google then. So, but I the story, of course. Sadly, this didn't really take me that far because I had 100 pounds, but I had a very, very big dream. Every day, I believed that I could change something. I really believe this because, like, the 800 pounds, this is representative of a number of people that gave me that money. It wasn't mine. So every time I take the bus, I think of a friend that gave me money for to go to school. So I went to school, and anyway, in the end, I landed in a work placement in Amsterdam at the European Cultural Foundation. It's like the only Asian person there in the early 2000s. So it's a little bit strange to be in a very European environment. And there I was, I'm from the Philippines, and I'm gonna take over the world. And I had no money. I didn't have the network. Didn't know anyone. Didn't know anything about the history of, of where I was. But I really just believe that I was very clear with what I was going to do and why I was there. So even when I was hungry, even when I think I was not afraid, because like always someone always helps and something always happens. Then when I was working in Amsterdam, I realized that maybe they don't have the answer. When I was at university, when I was in grad school at Warwick, I realized, oh, they're not so, they don't seem to be so good. It's like all these things, and they don't really maybe have the answer. And then I thought I had again another imagination. So this is again how imagination came into play. And I said, maybe I should work between Asia. Because when I was working in Amsterdam, it was the year that I think the European Union was about to be enlarged. And the year before, uh, the mayor of Amsterdam, time was killed in public. And so there were a lot of debates about foreigners coming in, etc. So there was no goal for me to keep on working there. But then I couldn't also understand this idea of Europe and beyond. These were the discussions then. And Europe and beyond for them was Eastern Europe. And it was a topic that, well, it is, I think, of course, it's very important. It's very important because we're all connected. The story is also our story. But it wasn't that close to my heart. If I'm going to keep working in culture, and I know it, I will always be working in the arts and culture, that I will not sadly wealthy. So I better do something that's very close to my heart. So I had this thought that, okay, I will do the Asia and Europe. And how are you gonna do this? And people are saying like, how are you gonna get a job in Asian? I don't know, but it will happen. So I had applied for a job at the Asia Europe Foundation, which was Singapore. At that time, this foundation was operating between two continents, ASEAN plus three, and then the European Union. And I applied the first time, it didn't get through. So I went another way, I found another way, and there's always this good Samaritan. I applied for the education department because I couldn't make it through the culture department. And this guy said, I feel so sorry if I take you because it seems that you are really a person who's in the arts. So I will recommend you to my colleague. And this is like really before all these people can find out things about you. There's no social media. And the person that wrote to me, yeah, it's my former boss, Chulumani Chartsuwan, the one in silver. She's the former ambassador of Thailand to the UN, to the European Union. And she found out that I was applying for another department, and she goes like, "Why are you not interested to work with me?" And so she came to London. She came to London to see me because she was so curious who this person was, like writing to everyone did this thick paper in contract. And she said that she would like to hire me to run the Asia Europe Museum Network. And so this Asia Europe Museum Network, again, a different period in time, um, early 2000s. discussions were on repatriation of collections from the European collection to Asia. And I was tasked to sort of make this network known. They needed someone who was really in love with the arts and was also savvy in marketing. This was quite unusual skill set around this time because if you're in the arts, you don't necessarily have this interest in branding, marketing, etc. But I always had this love for that because I always want people to know what I'm doing or what my friends are doing, whether this is in visual arts, theater, dance, or music. So within 6 months of working there, at the Asia Foundation, I got a little bit bored because like I was working with all these directors. Again, like very naively, I didn't know who these people were. They were like British Museum, K. Brownlee, Pompidou, or whatever. And it didn't really mean anything to me except that I felt that there was a lot of talking. You know, we had a lot of things. Like I think, of course, because you're always discussing things. And then I asked for additional work, and I was given the music and dance program, which is the Young Artist Exchange. So I'd like to like stress, I think, like for an institution like the Asia Foundation, the museums obviously are very important, especially when you're lobbying for money with like all these governments, because the heads of museums have generally, I think, if not all, have direct access to the office of the president, the office of prime ministers, or kings and queens. So this particular program is sort of secure, but a young artist exchange program in this period nowadays, it's of course very hip to work with young people. But in this period, that we had to really think, how do you push forward an exchange between young musicians and young dancers, young photographers, filmmakers? So in this role, I somewhat inadvertently became a curator for interdisciplinary collaborations. It just landed on my lap, and so I had to act on it. And so it's this in this period that began experimenting with ideas and how to bring different types of artists together. So, for example, like for music, how do you justify a spending, for example, I don't know, X amount of hundred thousands of dollars for this? So you have to prove that, okay, the event happened, the thing happened, but then what is the outcome, you know, beyond showing that it happened? So the first music program when we launched Impulse, we did it in the Philippines because since I was the one leading it, it was more accessible. So the rule was that every time you organize a particular project, you do it alternate in between the two continents, so one in Asia and then one in Europe. So you have to be also very strategic when you pick the country or pick the city where you're going to organize this exchange, because if there are big donors, say to the foundation, etc., or with how much it will impact our work. So anyway, so for the music program, it started with classical music and traditional instrumentalists. And then the second leg was the traditional voices, which we brought to Ireland. And then I realized that while the person to person, the contact between artists, while this was good for artists, how can I sustain this? Even if the APR Foundation has, you still have to prove that it is worth giving the money to. And I had another idea. So, because I thought like it's very difficult to attract audiences, you know, to make them come to see these young artist shows, other than the exchange. So basically, the format is that somebody come from all these countries, there are about 25 of them or 30 in one location. They would be there for about 10 days. They would exchange, talk about their practice, talk about what happens in their countries or in their universities, etc. But what I did for the third time was I thought, I want to go to China. Let's do it in Beijing. And I wanted to occupy the Great Wall. Um, that didn't really happen, but it was not just about occupying the Great Wall of China. Instead of classical musicians, I wanted DJs. I mean, if you're having a classical show, say voice or instruments, you know, a classical concert, you know how hard it is to make sure that people come. unless of course it's or I don't know some famous person. But then with DJs, young people just naturally gravitate to clubs. They would just come over. It's not a problem, and they would be more than willing to pay for it. They would queue up for it. And I thought, what a great idea to do this DJ project. So I went to Beijing to investigate, and the people generally I have been quite lucky in that way. That when I'm going to one city, the right people find me, or they and then we are able to do things together. But of course, I had to legitimize this. You know, it's like the Asia Foundation, which is a quasi-diplomatic institution doing DJ project. So our PR office was like, "What? Asia, you should like literally." I heard the guy. He was like, "The Asia Foundation DJs," and I thought it sounded great. It's music has no borders. So I found co-conspirators. I had to find two co-curators who were experts in DJ music. One has a PhD. He was a philosopher by day and a DJ by night. His name's Alexander Motori. He's from Sweden, and he specializes in this I guess intersection of culture, like because through music. Music is one way that um, you can actually be anyone. So there are really no borders. It's free. It moves freely. Of course, when we were doing the project, we realized that's not necessarily true because we were in Beijing, and all the other artists, all the other DJs had shared their own experiences of how they're being treated, say, I don't know, in Czech Republic or in Hungary, we have 21 people, and then another co-curator who is based in China, Leon Lee. Um, So we had this and we occupied instead of like the Great Wall of China, we were able to get from the smallest to mid-range to the biggest club in Beijing and to present images of daily life through photography and music for an entire period of like 10 days. So we were moving for 10 days with only 21 DJs. Um, it's just to illustrate like, how we kind of manage a little thing. And then for the other one, sometimes like really my imagination gets a little bit wild. So I thought like, okay, how to save? It's always like how to keep on working. Not only it's not just about curating, but also being strategic. How you pair your imagination with strategy. So this is just an example. It's like point to point, and normally it happens. I mentioned in one country. In this case, I decided that it happened in five cities in five countries, pairing a very established visual artists with a young choreographers so that the young choreographers can learn about the life and methodologies of the visual artist. So it's not really there is. I find that by breaking it apart, like it's not choreographer uh, eases out a lot of tension or pressure because then you learn something fresh and you're not really competing with each other. Um, yeah, this is I chose this because like this is one of my first collaborators from Malaysia. Ibrahim Hussein, the late Ibrahim Hussein, agreed to receive um, the artist Bruno Predet from France. Actually, this I think was one of the last of Ibrahim Hussein. Because they use this. I saw in the obituary they use this photograph. Um, yeah, but the piece anyway survived. Apart from the, for example, of Ibrahim Hussein, there was also choreography that was used afterwards, long after, years later after this project has been completed. So that's about the yeah. That's just that's an image. Oh, that's the guy that gave the guy the with the glasses. That's the guy that gave me the money for my ticket. That's Ben Cobb. So they were both really famous, and they were both so starstruck to meet each other. And I put them up in a one-star hotel in Warsaw, and they were so happy. Anyway, that was like just one way, and this was the total crazy moment after the project, after the choreographer and the visual artist met in the respective cities. For Ib, they went to Kuala Lumpur and to Langkawi. For Bangkok, the choreographer went to Baguio. There's one choreographer that went to Paris, and there's another choreographer that went to Lisbon. And then eventually they met in Warsaw. to meet up with a big group of people like you, new more faces, and then they had to create like sketches or choreographic sketches based on their experience in the different cities. But this wasn't enough, so I felt that I felt compelled, like I was again restless because I was younger, so I had to leave. At some point, the things ended, and I guess I was very yeah. I fear nothing. This is why I wrote this. Is courage, but I was never really fearless, at least at that time. I never was afraid to lose my job, so I had stepped away from the institutional role and decided to try New York. I was looking around for a job in New York, but then the economic crisis happened, so that wasn't really in favor of me. But what happened was that a good friend of mine who already participated in some of my projects she participated in my project in Tokyo, in Beijing, Helsinki. She'd asked me whether I'd be willing to move temporarily to Berlin. Maybe I should help her with her project that I was already engaged in writing the proposal for the European Union. It was an art project, and it was sold to me as a simpler edition of my works. The work that they're going to do is based on the format that I had devised for the Asia Foundation. So all we had to do was work in 4 countries, not 36. She said, easy, so easy for you, 4 countries. And you just need to organize a workshop, one big conference, 200 people or so, and then one installation. So that's not really a big ask, right, compared to 36 um, countries. But of course, so the project, my Great Wall of China didn't happen, but I had this project called Challenging Walls. I was the lead producer at that time, co-curator with my one of my best friends, Rudy Suntz, and her collaborator, Mikael Wright. I don't know if you recognize this wall. This is the separation line between Israel and Palestine. It runs 798 kilometers, and it's about 9-meter high, solid like wall. And I think when I got there the first time, it's not a question of how far would you go for art. I was like, this is it, Vanini Belarmino. This is the end of you. It's like I really wonder how art could actually change something with this concrete wall. And we gone through a lot of things, so it's like really how far would you go for art? So my best friend is she's Jewish. She's like German Israeli, and we had to smuggle her in Ramallah. So we have a team. So the condition of the project is that the reason why I was in it is that because of the four wall divided societies, it would be former East West Germany, Northern Ireland, Catholic Protestant, and then the third is Cyprus, for, Greek and Turkish Cypriot sides, and then Israel and Palestine. The idea is that we would gather photographers from both sides of the wall to work together to unmask the face of the other. And then we would also work with researchers. So we did this all, there's like 3 of us in the team and some other friends, but we were all young and we raised the funds ourselves. We convinced a lot of people and other institutions to partner with us. And like really from ground up, in the same manner that I approached for the Issue Foundation, except that, it's a bit different because the Issue Foundation has its own funding. We were like youngsters having this dream of breaking this wall even for 2 days. Um, yeah, this another sort of like we had to go to both sides. And it takes, to go from here to that side, it takes about 4 hours, and also to gather the people that would work with us from the opposite sides of the wall was another challenge. But nonetheless, we managed. I set up a team we set up a team both in Jerusalem and in University of Al Quds. That took a lot of convincing because nobody, I guess, no one in Palestine would want to see this wall. We had gone to see also like when I say we smuggled my friend, we actually almost died in a car because there was five of us. It's like a really strange combination of people. So it's like five people in one car. The driver's an Israeli activist. There's a guy, Palestinian guy, who's Italian, who's Italian roots, and then Filipino, and one he's called Mickey Blue Eyes, like really blonde, blue-eyed German guy, and my friend who's like Ruti, who's like Israeli. So and we crossed like a border by accident. Like I think it was a military camp, and we thought we were gonna get shot at, but I'm still here. So so obviously we survived. But this is the installation that we did. We occupied it for 2 days. We bus people from the center of Jerusalem. I believe many Israelis have not been there, and a lot of the Palestinians on the other side also. They hardly look at this. I mean, who wants to look at this wall? Um, I guess, like, yeah. So for this project, I think afterwards, I was supposed to be in Berlin for 6 months for this. I was really disillusioned after this project. It was we sort of, if you say success, to realize the project is, but you ask yourself. I started with this whole journey because I really believe in something good about the arts that it could change things. But I felt like at this moment, and maybe still to this day, I'm still questioning myself whether did we actually anything. So I had to take a break for quite a while. 6 months. I was still in Berlin after 6 months, and it became a year. And then again, me, imagining things, started imagining things again. I thought another thing. So I thought, so first I thought Asia, Europe. Now I left, and then now I thought maybe I could be the voice of Asia in Europe. I don't know where I get all these ideas, but because like I guess I was an only child, so I always have to invent stories, and I still it kind of works in my favor. And I noticed that like 6 months, a year into two, and the Berlin Wall. So moving on to Berlin, it was the 20th anniversary of the Berlin Wall, and I thought I would be one of the game changers of the city. And I really believe this, so I stayed on. So 1 year became two, three. The next thing I knew, I was there for 5 years. I was part of the fabric of Berlin. And in the first year, they said that no one has done this, but like I basically arrived there and said, "Hello, I'm here," and I called every person, every gatekeeper in the city. I didn't speak German at that time. Thankfully, I could now. But I was my only literature was this ex-Berliner, and Berlin wasn't what it is now. But at that time, any person that I thought was important, I would call this person or write to this person and say, "Hey, I'm great, and I heard you're looking for someone great. I have a lot of ideas, and I want to work with you." And so that's what I did, and I kept on again with this interdisciplinary collaborations without funding, without structure, I guess without necessarily a glimmer of hope other than the dream that I will change the city again. This time I will be part of this city because the city needs me. This is really what I believe in. And it kind of happened like people had to say yes because I refused to accept any no from any person. So I launched this project called Sensors. It's new media performance art, and this time around, I wanted to take over clubs, parks, an art center. So I work with Berlin Biennale and the Radial System. This one is a Curating, which is one of the most famous clubs in Berlin around that time. Became famous after like around '89. Still around, but it's no longer a club because of course people have changed. Like yeah, I mean they're my age, so they're no more into clubbing. But then as I was there, because I was living a very precarious life to work as an independent curator, and I wasn't part of any system. So in 5 years, I knew that I was navigating through uncertainty and repeated rejections. Every time I see like a thank you letter, I start to cry, and then I pick up myself and I say again like, okay, it's okay, Mimi, it's okay. working on my own. By the way, the company is called Belarmino and Partners because it was originally supposed to be Belarmino and Pop. Pop is the last name, it's a very German thing. Like Pop, Susa Pop is another curator, another dreamer like me, and she's a new media arts curator, but she already had her own company, and in the end, she also wanted to take over the world and wanted to get into my Asian network. So she wanted to sign the company with me, but in the end, I did it on my own. But just as when I was about to quit, across the across the waters, I ask, of course, myself, I ask myself, do you want history to just pass you by? Because, my apartment is right in front of the train, and the train, I see it every day, like, well, sometimes I'm doing my German exercises, but all this work that I was doing in Berlin surprisingly had some sort of resonance, and it rippled through through Singapore. So resonance isn't just about producing art. I guess it's about responding to place, to context, and other unseen connections between people. So luckily, it was not all so sad, like all these thank you letters. Marina Bay Sands opened in 2011. They didn't hire me, but they had like a museum called Art Science Museum. If you have not been to Singapore, or if you have been to Singapore, this is the Moshe Safdie building. It's like this. It's I call it like palm of the eight fingers or something. It has this, and they were focused on delivering blockbuster exhibitions. But because they were delivering blockbuster exhibitions, they needed something to connect it with the local context. So when they were first doing Dali, Van Gogh, Andy Warhol, presenting exhibitions like Titanic or even Harry Potter, I was fortunate enough to be invited to curate artistic programming and provide context, offer local context, Singaporean, Southeast Asian context through different forms of art and like developing new content as I had in Berlin. So, and because of this, that led me now to the next institution. Because this was a period when Singapore was opening up new museums, and I didn't expect that I would land there, but somehow, because my heart was in Berlin, it's totally, if you guys have not been, you have to go. It's totally crazy. It's like anything goes, and you can just dream as much as you can. But it depends on how strong you are, how strong will you are, because you have to fight for your dream, you have to fight for your imagination, just as I had to. And in the end, I I worked for the National Gallery. I thought that they wanted the same thing, the art that I do at the Art Science Museum. The Art Science Museum, only in the latter part that they had the audiences, you could see all sorts of people coming through, like the most experimental combinations that I was doing for them every month. But then for the National Gallery, I was assigned to run two peak programs, which are the two festivals. One is the Gallery Children's Biennale and the indoor installation for the Light to Night Festival. When I was tasked to do this, I'm not, I don't know, I don't have kids, and I'm not exactly kid friendly, but a lot of people said that I am crazy enough, I'm a kid, almost like a kid. Therefore, it fits for me to curate this show. So I was tasked to deliver 15 installations a year. Yeah, 15. 15 on top of the interdisciplinary programs. The Gal Children's Biennale had 10, and Light Tonight had another 5, so at the beginning of the year. And it was the reason, I guess, that why I was hired during this time is that they needed someone who could work closely with artists, who could be trusted by artists, and who could collaborate with them, direct them in a certain way by which they could develop works that are immersive, participatory, and interactive across the public circulation areas of the National Gallery. I think I can make, yeah, because it was in the beginning, it was sort of like a lot of empty walls, and people, I think, were complaining like there are dead spaces. So I was assigned to the dead spaces, which was, it was fun. And like it was super fun actually because like I work with if you had the budget and the best minds to work with, you could almost imagine. I already mentioned several times imagination. You could almost imagine almost anything, everything, as long as you don't lie, as long as you know how to play by the rules. This is just an example, some of the examples of the work that have done for the National Gallery. This is a commission for the Light Tonight Festival. It's a work by Thai artist Inari Santitak. It's called The House is Crumbling. Um, this is one of a very hard piece because it followed Yayoi Kusama's obliteration route, and it was a super blockbuster. And the artist had no intent of having like a blockbuster show, but she wanted people to interact with these 4,000 pillows. You can actually move them around. It's like Legos. You can remove them. It had 18 strings. And but like after all the lashings I got because the numbers were not super high, but it was a great project. If you're ever going to Hong Kong this month or next it will be there at M plus. So this is when I say resonance. So well, at that time it felt like, oh my God, it was such a difficult project. Now it's going to M plus. So and I'm no longer with the National Gallery, so it's even better. So this is a work by David Medalli's Stitch in Time. It's from 1968. But of course, in a very Singapore fashion, um, it's not very. If you look at it, it's a very important work by David Medalla. It was part of the document, it was a documental with Harold Zeman. And question was like, how do you make it like, how do I sell this to my boss because it's not so sexy? It's like people can stitch whatever they want in the fabric, but then she wanted like the biggest ever stitching time in the whole wide world. And David Medallia is more interested in like interactivity and contact with the public, just as I am. But I was very fortunate that he trusted me. He gave me again. The artist gave me carte blanche to decide, together with his partner Adan and Curvis, to develop this work. And this tapestry journeyed across Singapore, which is not very big. About 600 people contributed to it, and I installed another piece, which is on ongoing installation at the National Gallery for the Stitch in Time. This would have been one of his last shows before he had um, passed away as well, so it was quite timely. He was living, he was already in Europe. He's considered actually the father of kinetic art in Britain. So you can look at his works are also in the Tate collection. We fought for these works to be a collection from the 60s, which was another story altogether. But yeah, he's also an inspiration because, like, when you say how far would you go for art, actually, when I was having a difficult time in Berlin, I had met David Medallia, and he's like a really important figure in the art. And I was so free to contact him when I was in London when I was a student because he was a conceptual artist, and I wasn't so prepared yet at that time. And I had seen how he lived, but also during this period when I messaged him that I wanted to speak to you and I would come to your studio, he could no longer speak. And this is the reason why I am continuing to do my work because like David could hardly speak when I came to his studio with my boss. But I told him I'm not coming as many, I'm coming as National Gallery, so please guys get ready with your acting. So they were like prepared, etc. And even if he was struggling with his speech, he still tried to explain everything all over again so that she would be convinced that she could put this up at the National Gallery. Um, this is another work of Filipino artist Mark Costiniani. If you had been also to the National Gallery, it's a very long bridge. As you it's just high, but it's the abyss. It was supposed to be there for 6 months, part of the Gallery Children's Biennale. Uh, but then it was so popular. So again, I had to figure out a way by which how to make it interesting. It's going to be there for a long time. So every year, for 4 years, this artwork, it's the only artwork that was changing its face. every year. So it had a facelift every year. We changed the content every year, follow the theme of the festival. And yeah, and it also had a sister. It also gave birth to something else at the Statisches Kunstsammlung in Dresden, which developed another show similar to the National Gallery. Um, and they produced the sister of this work, Fire Walk, A Bridge of Embers. In terms of resonance, this work is now back with the artists. It has been shown at Ateneo Art Gallery in the Philippines, and the museum is being built, purposely built for it by the artist in his land, along with other three of the monumental works, along with the sister from Dresden and another work from Venice Biennale. Um, I thought this is another good example. I this project is very close to my heart. This is the Small Big Dreamers that May mentioned earlier. I work closely with the artist Lee Wen, who is a performance artist. If you love performance, before I even knew about Singapore, I already knew about um, artists, not the artist, but just the image of the Yellow Man. It's called Yellow Man. He's known for his performance. Yellow Man walks around as a yellow person. He basically decided to paint himself yellow because when he was studying in London, people thought he was from China. And he kept saying, "No, I'm Singaporean." And so what he did was to paint yellow on yellow. So he became the Yellow Man. And on the latter part of his, in the last days of his life, or like at least last 10 years of his life, he was plagued with Parkinson's disease. So that's, I guess, the irony also, like performance artist with Parkinson's. So I decided, like, I asked whether he would be interested to work with me. And so we translated his works, poetry, drawings, performances, and installations to 5 large-scale installations based on his life and his works across the National Gallery. This is particularly interesting because for me, because this was inspired by Penang. I wasn't living in Penang yet, but I had seen, those iron things in the street and the heritage works. And I was very inspired by this. And I thought what a great way to show his drawings with this iron railing. So yeah, so that's just an example. This is also an example of his performance work. We wanted to sort of let the children. This is a work for children. I wanted the children to imagine what it's like to be a performance artist. So I wrote a dramaturgy for the show, which was approved by the artist. This is one of the last shows that I have done. Alfredo and Isabella Tulisan. They're Australian Filipinos. This is Head Home. It was edition. And it recently, so I left the National Gallery in 2021. It's already 2025. This show was shown in Dresden as well. And it just ended in April of this year. So talk about resonance. So, but then, all good things must come to an end. So I had to leave the National Gallery. These are just some of the works that I had done. So, because I think a lot of people think that I only work in performance. I was doing a lot of work, yeah, a lot of large scale works. It's always involving the public. I was always interested about the reaction between the relationship between space and the people, the artists, and the public. So these are just some of the examples. These are some of the interventions across the National Gallery. And yeah, so at some point I had to leave, so I left the building. And so now I have this thing, agency, which is what happens to the question now, no? What happens when you leave an institution? You've seen the works, I've explained big ones. How can I continue to work as a curator? Would I be less of a curator if I left the National Gallery? Um, because I have no more structure and I have no more budget, I have no more team. So I had to go back to my company, Belarmino and Partners. Forget about the 60,000 square feet of space at the National Gallery. And so once again, I found myself where I started. And then we moved here to Penang, and one day I was walking in Batu Feringhi did. And again, I had another idea. And I thought, like, you know, so if I don't have any money, I don't have any space. But, look at all water, the beach, and all the mountains. And so from Penang, I had conceived a project called In Situ Performances Exhibition. I thought, wouldn't it be great? So if I don't have money to construct all this, I still have the network and I can still build the show based on bodies of artists and public. So I thought of works about walking, breathing, sleeping, dropping flowers, lying on the ground. You've seen some of them on the video, like mobile sculptures and so on. So, and then this time around, I could dream bigger beyond 60,000 square feet and take over mountains, seaside, urban jungle, historical landmarks, architectural landmarks, crazy things, streets, whatever. So, and in the future, like, I kind of want to go to a sugar plantation. So I just entertain these ideas, and so the project is born. So when I say rewrite and inherit, rewrite the path that you inherit. I find that this image represents that, like in terms of agency. This is the first performance for it happened in Singapore at LaSalle College of the Arts. That image is Patrick Flores and Lilibeth Cuenca Rasmussen. And so I think that image summarizes this rewriting of the path because our Patrick Flores is the chief curator of the National Gallery who came after I left. He's also a very old friend and the reason why I started working in the arts. But he's very well known as an art historian, a respected art historian. And of course, it's a more classical way of working as a curator in the arts, right? All these papers. And Philip, on the other hand, is a performance artist. And in this image, she's reenacting Yoko Ono's cut piece as part of her work in Boy. So both ways, I think like it represents this rewriting of the past that was set before you, because you could actually, I think, do that. Um, this is just one of the pieces, like a breathing piece. It's from sunrise to sunset. It's a piece by Sophie Dupont, which marks her breath from sunrise to sunset. And this happened in Mount Makiling and Los Baños and in the Philippines. We did it also in Singapore. This was an Intramuros, the walled city of Manila. Flower Drop by Mali Haslund, where I asked the artist to work with another local artist to drop the flowers. So pretty much he's like walking like a sculpture with his flowers. And then she accidentally drops the flower. And then when we pick it up, she just said, it's for you. So those that was quite ridiculously successful, that performance. And all of it actually, it was kind of you will see in the video. But anyway, these are like mobile sculptures, so creating the move, work with sculptures at the moment. This is another piece of the seaside, surfing capital of the Philippines, La Union, where we presented Mali Hustle called Infinite, where we gathered about 100 people, a lot of them surfers. Right before the storm last year, we again, like, how far would you go for a party? We were running for our lives, basically, because we had to move the performance to an earlier date because of the impending storm across the country. So, yeah, these are just some examples. And I think for a final note, I just want to show the video, the short clip of In Situ. how far would you go for art? Thank you.
Right. So we've seen a very interesting life of Vanini. Um, I've prepared a few questions to ask. You have not asked this. It's one of those sessions where I've not given her a single question I would ask her. So let's see how she will answer my very sharp questions. uh, Let me ask my questions, then we'll open it up to the audience to ask those burning questions that you may have. Um, App that we are hosted by Penang Institute with the motto "Making Ideas Work." Right? Uh, you've been working your life, realizing many of your ideas about the visual art. How far would you go for art? We've heard you went around the world and did all those crazy things, but you ended up in Singapore. 5 years as the assistant director of program at the National Gallery of Singapore. Um, Pardon if there's any Singaporean here. Any Singaporean? I'm going to do a bit of Singapore bashing. Yeah. Singapore is not particularly known for being daring or being acceptive of daring staff, especially artists. Very sanitized. Beginning of this year, I went to Art Singapore. Uh, I went to see a show, part of the art outreach program at Gilman. The artist was ABC, Chia Ik Beng. He's a photographer, and his installation was he spent years taking interesting photos in Singapore, things in public. Right? For example, SG50 celebrated 60, but SG50, and somebody did a graffiti, and S became a money sign. Right? Things like this, and the show had a disclaimer. This disclaimer is very interesting. It says that in capturing images of the defacement of government property, the artist is in no way condoning such acts, which are an offense under the law. So that's Singapore. So, did Singapore restrict your creative urge? If it did, how did you last 5 years? If not, why not?
That's a very good question. Thank you. I think for me, interestingly, Singapore is like a blank canvas. You could actually do almost everything and anything as long as you don't go beyond that canvas that's given to you. So I arrived there early 2000, so I think I have sort of accustomed to certain things that I just do it automatically, and I know how to work around it. And in so doing, I become more creative. There's a lot of restrictions, but if you know how to manage it, then you could actually move forward. And I think the reason why some of the works that I'm doing now have gone to that level is because I had the opportunity to sort of even do some of the experiments in Singapore, which is fully funded and fully supported. Um, yeah, so it didn't really, I think, restrict me because like the works, if you could actually the depth of works that was delivered for the National Gallery, for example, both in terms of installations or performance interventions, were actually not so restrictive. But I had to work around.
That's wise. During the pandemic, I saw a video from this was done by an artist. It talks about limitation inspires creativity, and I think that's what you did well in Singapore and surviving that 5 years. But were you doing a lot of performance art in Singapore?
Yes,
You were.
yes, and as part of my role. I made sure because I was delivering the big shows, which I mentioned earlier, were like these installations, and the installations generated a lot of audiences, a lot of traffic, foot traffic, like by the millions a year. And therefore, I could actually do the more interesting things, the more those that are closer to my heart, which is on performance. And that kind of in the beginning, one of the first works that I did was I asked a violinist, a classical violinist, but she's a performance artist and a visual artist, to perform for 6 hours, initially to respond to one of the pieces. But what happened was she started walking from the from City Hall to City Hall wing of the National Gallery to the Supreme Court for 6 hours using the violin and the voice. But this wasn't so, I guess, like controversial as the image that you had shown me earlier. But it was already something that kind of sparked, like, I guess, like tension as well. And she's extremely beautiful lady wearing like kimono and playing the violin and using her voice for 6 hours for 13 days. And in the first few days, the people, the security, the front of house, they were a little bit like baffled, like, what is she doing? Why is this allowed? And if you cross that line, oh my God, I will get a call or something like that. And then I think towards the end, the people were very sad that it ended. So I figured like it was a very difficult process for me and the artist because of course the artist felt like, oh my God, every move is being reported. You put up a poster. But then we were able to realize this work that actually magically turned out, like she just recently performed this or last year she performed this in Athens, the same piece. The same piece was invited to the Paris Philharmonie. And as a result, she was also invited by the Marcus Gropius Bau, which is now a longer term project, which is called the Singing Project. So that sort of certain restrictions, we were able to work around it. Um, and after that, things got slightly easier. I mean, the sort of restrictions were not really even making sense sometimes. So you just have to know how to edit it, but you just have to keep focus on what you're supposed to do or you want to do.
After some Singapore bashing, let me be self-deprecating. You're now in Penang.
Yes.
Uh, Penang is known for our streetscape art. Uh, in the last decade, maybe the street art, not particularly known for performance art. I'm looking forward to those things coming by the end of the year. Let me go to the origin of performance art. Um, some would say that it started with the Dadaists. All right, Dadaism started in the 1910s in response to World War One, and it was radical. It was, in fact, anti-art. Right, Marshall Duchamp, you heard of his ready-made. Um, Dadaism rejected logic, reason, traditional artistic sensibility. Um, from there, we have the surrealist, and Cage came out with famous avant-garde live action. Then the beginning of performance art as an art form is accepted as Kaprov's 1959 New York uh, performance. Um, with that, how much of Dadaism, that anti-establishment, anti-art movement, do you see performance art still embracing, or is it now so it's accepted as art?
I think it's a very different period in time. So, for example, for me, at least, because I'm not a performance artist, I'm a curator. I'm interested in performance work that respond to places. So it doesn't have to be whether it's, I don't know if it's it's not really my themes. Like I don't do anti-establishment necessarily, but
In
of course,
Singapore,
although of course I cannot stop an artist like from doing a specific work that they want, but the specific artists that I choose for the works that can work with me, I'm more interested in works that are able to connect to a bigger public, that's able to touch people or maybe even antagonize people. I had one performance that totally irritated the audience. They kind of walked out, and it's just without even doing anything radical. He was just mixing. He's wearing. It's in the video. Like he's wearing these goggles and just projected this media piece or media piece that could irritate. But it doesn't have to be deliberately against something. But I think art should trigger something, whether that's good or bad, is up to the viewer, up to the receiver.
So when that particular artist did then and got those reactions from the public,
Yeah.
what was your reaction to that?
Well, I didn't have to react to it. I mean, it's like in Singapore, we had to collect like feedback forms, and that was the most least interesting thing. I mean, I had to do this reporting, but it doesn't make it less impactful. I think when you have like strong reactions, I think as a curator, this is like really amazing. You know, whether it's good or bad, if it gives you like a very strong reaction that they are angry, I mean, not super angry, but to some degree raise the bar. I mean, that kind of really excites me, to be honest. Yeah. 'Cause I can't control how people react to works.
I've personally started a art residency program called Timestamp. The curator I work with is Ku Chen Ching. He's the first generation contemporary Chinese art curator who's still practicing and doing pretty good work, not performance art per se. Uh, but in 2002, in China, there was a Nanjing in a park in China. He did a series of performance art, one of which created a lot of controversy. He had in fact, he had a big role to play together with the artist. Uh, they got a carcass of a cow from a market. All right, this is one where the fur was still on, and he got the artist to get into the stomach of the cow with rose petals, and it was sewn up. The cow's stomach was sewn up, and the artist was to cut open the cow and emerge. All right, from it. So the park authority, when they saw it, they immediately tried to stop it. All right. Two reaction. Let me read to you. Li Xiaoshan, an art professor, say, I think it's quite regrettable. This fear stems from a lack of understanding. In reality, it doesn't lead to any negative consequences referring to those acts. Um, while you have other comments like this, these performance artists have misinterpreted the true meaning of performance art, presenting something overly morbid and extreme. In fact, performance art can also be conveyed with very warm and emotional themes. However, many performance artists nowadays are obsessed with violent, self-abusive, bloody, and erotic acts such as scenes to intensely provoke people's sense in order to achieve fame. This is not art. It destroys it visual pollution. If this continues, the path of performance art will only become narrower and narrower. Uh, coming to mind are two other very famous performance art event. One is Abramovich. What she did was she offered the audience 52 objects, including a live gun, and 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 asked the audience to do anything with those objects on her. Right, so that was obviously very radical. The other artist was Yoko Ono. She sat in the gallery space and she invited the audience to use a scissor to cut any part of her clothing. All right. So what would you say, comparing your practice and what you see as good and performance art that will go in terms of how far you go for art?
I mean, for example, the Yoko Ono piece I just mentioned, we performed that in Singapore with Lilibeth. Um, I wouldn't as I mentioned, like the performance work that I choose, they usually are specifically chosen for a specific locale. So certain works I will not show in the works that I'm showing in Penang, for instance, there are three artists like Christian Falstaff, Hesson Holt, and Lian and Mali Hassan. They are specifically selected because I think they fit the aesthetics of Penang, they fit the culture of Penang, they fit the people of Penang. So I wouldn't necessarily choose, I don't know, like Abramovich, like with a gun. First of all, I cannot afford to work with Marina Abramovich because you have to fly
And
her.
no gun in Malaysia. So.
Uh, but although they have presented her a lot at the Bangkok Biennial, so I am working with very specific conditions as well at the moment because I work independently. So, but I am very clear also with the specific artists that I choose to work with. At the moment, I am funded. The works are funded in Denmark, and always looking for local partnerships, and therefore that's also into consideration. But conceptually, the heart of it is are the people. I really want to bring works that can engage the public, not not so much about controversy. I'm not interested in this like spectacle. As I mentioned, like the works that I choose are as simple as walking. I mean, even walking can be quite subversive. Even lying on the ground can be considered controversial. We were doing this piece, I think Serena was there, the 3 hour work that they were just lying on the ground. And it had slipped my mind that migrant workers lie on the ground and they could think that we are protesting. But we are not. I just wanted to have this experience for the people that this piece could be brought from Denmark to Singapore. I wanted to transform and show how, say, works in performance can be performed in different contexts.
Can we open it to the floor now? Yes, we want to. Can we get a mic pass?
I think you work across continent, and I think you've touched on the whole topic of you've got different stakeholder groups in this in these different countries. Each has different value. Each sees things differently for the funders and whatnot. So I think throughout all your experiences, there must be real examples in terms of how you then balance the choices that you're making, the curation that you then basically put on stage, and whether those will then remain applicable, let's say, in the next set of context and location. So how do you then basically choose, right, or decide what to showcase and what story to tell?
I mean, I, thank you. For me, for example, for Penang, I have to think of the context of Penang. So at the beginning of the year, for instance, maybe not this next show, but like I was asked to so China House all of a sudden asked me like to do a show, and I thought like, okay, what am I gonna do? So as I'm afraid of small spaces because I'm used to working large scale. So when this challenge was put forward, I thought that I would have to consider like I have to still be true to myself, which is now I'm moving towards really working with the performance with the body. And I decided to work with an artist that I really wanted to work with. Her name's Tekla Tamoria, and presented a work. Gotta remember the title. I could see the piece. I'm sorry, but anyway, I brought this Altor Bibo, and it's a sculptural piece. It's a wearable art, and I didn't have to think of stakeholders. I just wanted to think of a concept that I wanted to do, and I wanted to show the journey of this artist and this artwork in multiple formats. So it started as a piece of sculpture, her exploration in wearable art, photography, video, and then tapestry. But I, the balancing of the thing doesn't really come to my mind immediately. It just comes after. So the concept always takes precedence. So if I have an idea, I will pursue it. Um, and then once that idea has crystallized, then I will break down into parts whereby I could justify it to specific factors. And I try not to compromise.
Any other question? Yes, please. to, yeah, Mr. Rumi Maneksha is the founder of the firm they are now running. Yeah, right.
My art. Okay, art and performing arts can be used by liberation movements and also to free people. Have you come across any such artists or group of people who use art for the purpose of liberation, for the purpose of engagement against tyranny?
Well, there's a lot of them in the Philippines. I mean, I don't have to go to Israel and in Palestine,
Yeah.
but in the Philippines, it's quite big. There are a lot of collectives that existed in the 80s, in the 90s, that helped. There were young collectives from the University of the Philippines, Abay, and it's a group of artists called Marcos Tignani, the guy that I work with on like this mirror project where you think you're gonna fall. He's actually primarily a painter, and he belongs to a collective of at least like 10 more people. And they were basically building all these like murals that spoke up against the regime. But I wouldn't say that like to topple the government, but there's a lot of examples. Up to this day, I would take the Philippines because this is a very yeah. Kiri Delena, she works in film, and she is totally unafraid to document certain things like lives, what happened during the Duterte era when people were being killed, the war on drugs, and all that. Yeah. But yeah, there are several examples, and there are other curators working on that topic. It's also, again, not so much a topic that I work on. Uh, I guess the reason for that is that I'm really more interested in how to bring people together. Maybe I didn't really live in a conflict zone, but I really believe that art should be a vehicle for people to understand one another, and that's all that I could, within my capacity. I think that's what I could offer.
As a lawyer and an art activist, I encourage all forms of artistic expression, right? And I always say that I'll defend any artist in court for free. Right? Rumi, I don't know whether you would accept Zuna, the cartoonist, who promoted art for peace, but he was not shy and very critical of the political establishment. Perhaps he did contribute to the bringing down of a regime, liberation for us. um, if another question?
Uh, Picking from your diverse and global experience at making artwork in various societies, uh, coming from a parochial perspective, just for Penang, what are your thoughts about how a non-musician, a non-musical performance artist could possibly make a sustainable living in Penang? Knowing, I know, I understand you are probably familiar with our cost structure here. So your thoughts, please.
How to survive.
Yes, how does a non-musician performance artist survive and make a long-term career in Penang?
Well, like I guess like most artists all over the world, they have day jobs. If you don't belong to, sorry, but like it's a reality. I think as a curator, I've been quite lucky. I made a conscious decision. I'm independent, so I never had a day job other than National Gallery of the Asia Foundation. But some artists I know, they are professors. A lot of the artists I know are professors, um, or they have other things. Recently, I met a young Singaporean artist. He's already has a lot of commissions, but working as a teacher for special needs. And so I guess like in Penang, you would have to really also. I mean, the great thing about being in Penang is that it's cheap. So it's not like such a demanding city like New York or even Berlin, or Singapore. For sure, you will be able to eat if you have little money, but you have to be able to know what your strengths are to survive and continue working.
So she's seen the world. She's worked with establishment, how full-time artists can work, but I think she's also got that very Asian perspective. Do double job, do this as a side thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I was living in Berlin, I understood what it meant to be a starving artist. I actually thought that starving artists applied for everyone. So like, everyone was an artist in Berlin. Like, one of my best friends said, I just want to be an investment banker. I don't want to be an artist anymore because everyone's an artist. It's annoying. There are about more than 200,000 artists living in Berlin at that time. And but one thing about starving artists is that I wasn't part of the system. I wasn't German. I wasn't French. In France they have a system. You can just be an artist, and you can still rely on the social system, and the same in Germany. So of course I had to make ends meet. I had to work as a journalist for the arts, and so that's how I got access to a lot of people. So I mean that's just an example from my personal experience.
Perhaps a follow-up question is, you mentioned about doing immersive, participatory, interactive work where performance art is supposed to be. In Penang, a place of small spaces. I don't know if it's small mine, I don't think so. But we are known for our streetscape art, we are known for our street art. So not even talking about how to make a living, how do we even get artists to want to do performance art, something very different from what we have been doing? How do you think you can encourage us?
Um, I wouldn't really say that I'm not necessarily sure whether I'm in the position to encourage someone to do something, but I think if they feel that they have a need to do it, because you would have to want it. Performance art is not for everyone, and I can't ask Sume to be a performance artist because her interest is in textile art, for example, or like maybe earnest to become a performance artist. Yeah, he could be, but like I don't think artists need that encouragement. But what I want to do is like to encourage artists to keep working as artists and to find ways by which the work can be seen by as many people as possible, and for artists to continue their practice in the best way possible.
Interesting that you mentioned Sume and Ernest. Ernest did a big work. I see it as performance art. That was in Sumatra, where he got a illegal. He worked on a piece of illegal palm oil plantation, and he marked out because he saw the palm oil plantation from the sky in a plane, and they look like mosaics. And what he did was he got all it videoed, had the appropriate parts of the trees fallen, and came up with the word SOS. All right, in SOS, as if a shout of SOS from the jungle. So there's a big piece of performance art. Sume, she although she works with textile, but she also does with sound and art and music and performance. But these are the two that we have some hope with. I'm thinking more about the rest. How do we encourage them? Yeah.
You don't have to be a performance artist if that's not your calling. It's not for everyone.
Mm.
The character of the people I work with, at least in performance, is very different from the people doing installation work or for photographers. It has a different temperature, it's a different materiality. The body is it's so fragile, but it's a very difficult task. And you have to want it to do it, and you have to have the talent to do it. Not that an artist maybe this artist has a different type of talent from this other artist, and I think performance is not really for everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. It
Uh,
is developed for everyone, hopefully.
One last question from the audience. I see Ken Lee Tan Kwan Liang putting up his hand. And this is my resident artist who is doing an art installation for the CWC conference happening this weekend. Yes, Ken Lee. After that, we have Dr. Bear. Yes, Ken Lee.
Yes, very strong and powerful question to ask. How far you will go for the arts, for the artist? So may I ask the curator, how far will you go for the arts as an art curator? I ask this because you have worked in many countries, including Singapore, and as you have mentioned, there are always boundaries and guidelines and whatever, that you shouldn't cross. And my question specifically is, if one of your artists that you invited has somehow crossed the boundary, how will you as a curator defend or support or whatever you can?
In Malaysia, engage Likai, yes.
Can I ask, like, what do you mean by crossing the boundary?
Well, like all society, they are all different kind of boundary. Like in Singapore, you have encountered many kinds of boundary. And if you want a specific example, is like you are now in Malaysia, and if somebody do religiously crossing religious correctness in the performance, because performance are very on the spot and very ongoing, and if somehow during the performance he crossed the line as religiously incorrect, I don't want to be too specific, but religious incorrect, then how would you defend him or her, and how would you support or not, or whether you do or not?
Perhaps I can ask this question in this way. You have been very wise in the art that you curate. Have there been occasion where the artist went crazy on
Yes,
his or her
yes,
own?
yes. That's
I can't think of an example at the moment, but in the Asia Europe exchanges, there were a lot of instances. But generally, it's usually sometimes the public. It's not so much the artist, because I have been working with professional artists, and sometimes, most often than not, they're very professional. So when you say professional artists, they don't just randomly do some sort of random experiment just to show people. So I have been quite fortunate with that. So, but the response of the public can be quite something that's more volatile. For instance, when we were in China, I had a DJ, and she was Dutch, but she looked Chinese because she was Indonesian. She had Chinese roots. And the Chinese mafia arrived. This was like 3 a.m. in the morning. And they started saying they wanted to play Madonna. And the manager of the club, I said to her, because he said, "How do you react?" I said, "You could take care of this. You're the manager of this." No, Vanini, they're just going to start breaking glasses right now. And then I start seeing these big guys, like three or four of them. And then I hear shouting because they wanted my DJ out of this cube. And then somehow a bit of drama, but then everyone was happy. We changed the music. And then the following day, all the artists that I was working with, including this artist who was into the disco, was like all of a sudden adjusting her music for the public, because you don't know how your performance, how your work would trigger the reaction. So as professionals, you have to respond to the situation. Yeah.
Work with sensible artists. Yeah. Last question from Dr. Bear.
Actually picking this out from our online viewers. There are actually several questions, but I'll just pick one to close the night out. So looking at the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see the biggest opportunities for Asian voices in the global creative industries?
Such a good question.
It's
Okay, because I studied European cultural policy and I graduated in Delphi, where you have to touch this sort of, you have to foresee the future. Um, I'd like to think that opportunities would be open not just for Asian artists or European. There won't be any more this sort of. You will no longer be defined by where you come from, but you will just be defined as an artist, and the boundaries will all disappear. I think in 10 years, and if you are a good artist, you can be heard and you will go far.
Thank you. So a very big round of applause for Vanini Belarmino. Thank you.
A big round of applause to Mr. Lee for moderating this session. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us here this evening. We'll wrap it up now. And please feel free to go on to the Penang Institute website to rewatch this if you want to. And have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.